In this video, we will discuss exec mode types, iOS access methods, and configuration of iOS access to secure command line interfaces. We highly encourage you to open up your copy of Packet Tracer and practice the commands we reference. There are two types of exec modes that you can use when administering local and remote access to the command line interface: user exec mode and privileged exec mode. User exec mode is a mode the user will start in when accessing the command line interface for the first time, and is generally used for viewing statistics. You can easily identify if you are in user exec mode by checking for a greater than symbol next to the router or switch hostname. Privileged exec mode allows you to view and modify configurations and can be accessed by executing the command enable from user exec mode. You can easily identify if you are in privileged exec mode by checking for a # next to the router or switch hostname. Now that we know the two different exec modes, let's cover the different iOS access methods a network administrator can use to secure the command line interface. There are 4 methods to access the command line interface: Telnet, SSH, Console, and Auxiliary. The first 2 methods, SSH and Telnet, are only available over IP and can be used to gain remote access to the command line interface, whereas the last 2 methods, Console and the Auxiliary port, use a console cable and can only be performed over a direct, local connection to the network device. Access to the command line interface via the Auxiliary port is an option only available for routers and is not an option for Cisco switches. Now let's discuss configuring each of the iOS access methods for the purpose of securing the command line interface, for the purpose of external authentication servers, and for encrypting existing and future passwords stored on a router and/or switch. Before we jump into this section, let's recall the 2 types of exec modes: user and privileged. Since securing access to privileged mode is configured in the global configuration, this configuration will apply to all 4 types of iOS access methods. In order to configure the enable exec password, we will need to enter global configuration mode and execute either the enable password command, which will store an unencrypted version of the specific password, or execute the recommended enable secret command, which will store an encrypted version of the specified password. After completing this command, you may notice that next time you try to access enable mode, iOS will prompt you for a password. You may verify if there is currently an enabled password on the router or switch by performing the privileged exec mode command, show running configuration. Additionally, you can configure optional settings for each of the iOS access methods, which may enhance the user experience. Configurations such as disabling unsolicited console messages while typing and modifying the inactivity timeout. To prevent unsolicited console messages from interrupting the input you are typing, you can execute the following command. To modify the inactivity timeout, which has a default value of 10 minutes, we can execute the line configuration command exec timeout for minutes or exec timeout 0 for seconds. If you want to disable the inactivity timeout altogether, execute the command exec timeout 00. Now that we have configured the enable exec mode password and learned a little bit about optional commands for each iOS access method, let's configure and secure the console iOS access method. To configure the console access password, we need to enter line configuration mode. This can be done by entering privileged exec mode. Execute the following commands. Before moving on, it is important to note the 0 in the command line console 0. The 0 relates to the specific console port on the device. Some Cisco devices have more than one console port, so be sure you are configuring and using the correct console port during this configuration. Once in line configuration mode, execute the command password, and then execute the command login. The login command tells the iOS to require a password to gain access to the command line interface for this specific interface. Now let's configure and secure the auxiliary iOS method. The auxiliary port is a router-only port that is used in conjunction with an external modem to provide another method of CLI access. Essentially, the aux port allows a user to remotely dial in to the router to perform troubleshooting. Similarly, to configure the auxiliary password, we need to enter line configuration mode. Except this time, we will need to be in line configuration mode for the auxiliary interface. To do this, execute the global configuration command line aux 0. Once in line configuration mode, execute the command password. Once completed, execute the command login to tell the iOS to start asking for the specified password. Moving on, let's configure and secure the Telnet iOS access method. As with the last two iOS access mode configurations, Telnet is very similar except with one difference. As you may recall, Telnet uses IP to gain access to the command line interface. To configure Telnet access, assign an IP address to the interface we will be connecting our host to. Assign an IP address to the interface we will be connecting our host to. To configure an interface with an IP address, perform the following. Enter global configuration mode, then execute the command interface. Now that we are in interface mode, execute the command IP address. Once we've configured the IP address, we need to bring the interface up. We can do this by executing the command no shutdown. Now that we have configured an interface with an IP address, we need to enter the line configuration mode for the virtual termination lines. This can be done by executing the global configuration command line VTY05. The second number in this command specifies the number of concurrent Telnet sessions you want the device to support. If you are unsure of the maximum number of VTY lines available, you can perform a context-sensitive check by executing the global configuration command line VTY ? After typing the question mark, the range between the less than and the greater than symbols in the console output is the number of configurable VTY lines available for that device. Continuing on, once in line configuration mode, enter the line configuration command password. Once completed, execute the command login to tell the iOS to start asking for the specified password. Alternatively, you do not have to set a password in order to gain access via Telnet. You can tell the iOS to not require a password for Telnet users by executing the command no login while in line configuration mode. This is not recommended unless in a testing or learning environment. At this point, remote access for Telnet users has been configured and should be working. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to consider using our Cisco Adapt Prep software suite with Pass Guarantee. If you are currently preparing to take a Cisco certification exam or are simply looking to brush up on existing Cisco networking skills, then you have come to the right place. It's no secret that there are many different online solutions in the market today, but let us explain why we feel Cisco Adapt Prep is unique. Unlike other solutions, we go to great lengths to first understand your knowledge level. Traditional competitors tend to treat each learner as if they are all the same. Consider for a moment, you are someone who has been preparing for an exam for the last 3 months. Challenging you with trivial questions will waste your time. On the other hand, if you are brand new to a subject matter, challenging you with advanced questions will be confusing and will prevent you from learning effectively. With Adapt Prep, we first analyze your skill set on a personal level. This allows us to provide you with questions that will challenge you appropriately, allowing you to learn efficiently. At Adapt Prep, we take great pride in building your test-taking confidence. Many solutions offer comprehensive testing content. However, most lack the ability to understand when you are ready to take your exam and successfully pass. Understanding this principle is something Adapt Prep excels at. It does so by utilizing an earn level concept. The earn level concept is simple. When you start using Adapt Prep, your earn level will be 0. As you progress, it will continuously advance. Once your earn level reaches 7, you are ready to take your exam and pass. We are so confident you will pass your exam once your earn level reaches 7, we guarantee it. Again, we would like to thank you for your interest in our Adapt Prep software. We look forward to working with you in the future.